Thanks for staying with us here on The Real Story. We're continuing to talk about sustainability and now the local advocates protesting corporations and pushing them to step up when it comes to climate change. What are the frustrations and what could accountability and change actually look like? Joining me now is Helen Humphreys, Communications Coordinator at Connecticut Citizen Action Group. Thanks so much for taking the time, Helen.
Thanks for having me.
So I want to talk about CCAG. To start off, can you just tell me a little bit about who you are, what you're about, because you've been an advocacy group for about half a century now, right?
That's correct. Yes, we were founded in 1971. So Connecticut Citizen Action Group, we're a statewide membership-based organization. We've been around for over 50 years working on issues like climate change, environmental justice, access to healthcare, and voting rights. So we have thousands of members all around the state who have been advocating both to corporations and the legislature for issues like that.
Yeah. And we're in the middle of summer right now. And, we have seen natural disasters, poor air quality, even recently here in Connecticut, weeks of extreme heat and humidity. Everyone's felt it. Everyone's been complaining about it, I'm sure, too. So I want to talk about climate today. We know CCAG does a lot with accountability in general, a lot with healthcare, but right now you all are placing a lot of focus on environmental protection and lowering harmful emissions. Why is it so important to center that conversation right now?
Yeah, so like you said, we are in summer, and this is not just summer. These heat waves are not a natural part of our climate. The severity and extent of these heat waves are, again, just not just summer. While this one is likely to be one of the hottest on record, it's important to realize that this summer may also be one of the coldest summers in the future. So for populations that are especially vulnerable to heat, like young children, older adults, outdoor workers, peeps with disabled, the risks are even higher. People in low-income neighborhoods where air conditioning may be unaffordable and renters who often don't have the same protections for cooling as heating will face increasingly dangerous conditions. And so also, these extreme heat can affect economies. It can buckle railroad tracks, cause wires to sag, leading to transit delays, disruptions. It can overload electric systems with high demand, and it leads to blackouts just when people need the greatest amount of cooling that they can get.
Right.
So at the end of the day, climate change, it may sound dramatic, but it is killing people. It's killing people. It's affecting our economy. It's that simple, whether it's from heat stroke, respiratory disease, hypothermia, just lack of resources. This is no longer a future issue. It's a here and now issue, and drastic action needs to be taken.
Right. And when we talk about some of that drastic action, we know a lot of it is attempted to be started through organizing and climate activism specifically. There's been a shift really from harping on personal responsibilities, small things we can do day in and day out, to now corporate responsibility and divestment, something we're hearing constantly in all advocacy right now. So talk to me about why the priority has shifted there from individual action to accountability from corporations.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you framed that question that way, because the individual action is such an important part of this conversation, because the term carbon footprint was actually coined by oil companies. So British Petroleum, the second largest non-state owned oil company in the world, hired a public relations firm to promote the idea that climate change is not the fault of oil gas giants, but that of individuals. And so they successfully popularized the term carbon footprint. And the company unveiled this carbon footprint calculator so it could assess, your normal daily life. Going to work, buying food, traveling is largely responsible for the heating of the globe, when in fact that's just not true. In 2017, a report was released that concluded that just 100 companies have been the source of more than 70% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions since 1988. And that includes companies like ExxonMobil, Shell, British Petroleum, and Chevron. And they're some of the most high-emitting investor-owned companies since, again, 1988. So if fossil fuels continue to be extracted at the same rate over the next few decades, the global average temperature will be rising more than 4 degrees by the end of the century. And I know that when we talk about the concept of rising global temperatures, for someone who's not a climate scientist, that can feel a bit abstract.
Right.
And so I think the important thing to highlight what scientists have been saying about the real world consequences of those rising temperatures, it's likely to have catastrophic consequences, including substantial species extinction, a global food scarcity. People aren't going to have clean water to drink. They're not going to have clean air to breathe. Agriculture will suffer, and it'll lead to a massive food shortage and starvation. And so ultimately, I think that conversation around reduce, reuse, recycle is absolutely a great thing to do in your daily life, but you are not at fault for climate change. These 100 companies doing 70% of the greenhouse gas emissions, that is where the effort needs to be made.
Right. And we're in plastic-free July right now. We'll focus on, doing something individually. But like you said, you were just explaining, that shift. And one of those companies, I want to talk a little bit about CCAG's work to call it out. Travelers. This is something you all have been at for a long time now. Our capital city, so-called insurance capital of the world, Hartford. And what are you asking from Travelers?
Yeah, so like you said, Connecticut is the insurance capital of the world. So goes as Connecticut goes the insurance industry, as we like to say. So when you think about the climate crisis, insurance isn't always like the first thing that comes to mind.
Right.
Yeah, right. So, but the truth is that they play a much larger role in the potential clean energy transition than a lot of people give them credit for. So, fossil fuel projects cannot move forward without insurance. It's just not possible. So, in the machine that is the fossil fuel industry, insurance companies are one of the most important cogs. So the fact that neither Travelers, we've also been trying to pressure the Hartford and W.R. Berkeley, all three are Connecticut-based companies. We're trying to get them to align their company policies and investing and underwriting aligned with global climate goals. So by continuing to underwrite and invest in new oil and gas projects, Travelers in the Hartford are directly contributing to climate change. Right now, Travelers has about 4.7 billion in fossil fuel related investments. Travelers has only taken baby steps on reducing coal and tar sands investments and underwriting, and they need to step up and take real climate action across the board. Along with also the Hartford Insurance Company has almost 2 billion in fossil fuel related investments, even though they like to say that they're one of the world's most ethical companies. The Hartford would like to be seen as a climate leader, and we would like to see them as a climate leader. They still ensure the expansion of conventional oil and gas without any restrictions. And another thing that's happening is you're seeing these companies pull out of housing markets that are affected by climate change. There's companies that are pulling out of places in California because of wildfires or Florida because of the hurricanes, and are effectively punishing these homeowners for the destruction that these companies are directly propping up.
We know there were a lot of eyes last week on some protesters and demonstrations at the Travelers Championship and a recent shareholder meeting too. I'm sure we could keep talking about this for a while, but that's all the time we have, but definitely a lot to keep watching. We'll keep checking in on this. Thank you so much for being with us, Helen.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Well, that does it for us here on The Real Story. But if you want to watch these segments again, you can head to fox61.com or download the Fox 61 app and watch The Real Story every Sunday at 10 a.m. right here on Fox 61 and streaming on Fox 61 Plus. Have a great morning.